introduce our guest speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Really excited to have everybody join us. Like Ron said, we reached out to clubs all across North Mississippi and West Tennessee, and I see a lot of faces I recognize and some I don't. Thank you all very much for joining us. We're going to try to do this the next several weeks to make it more of a encompassing district-based Zoom call. So thank you all for joining us. I'm very happy in our first district-wide call to have Athletic Director Keith Carter from the University of Mississippi. I'll give Keith a real quick introduction here. I think most of you probably know Keith. Those of you who don't, you're in for a very nice surprise. Keith's a great guy. He's a former All-American basketball player at Ole Miss, longtime staff member. He was named permanent athletic director on November 22nd, 2019 by Chancellor Boyce. We're very excited to have him. I'm not going to read his introduction. It's on the invitation everyone got. I know there are going to be lots of questions for you, Keith. So without further ado, I'll turn it over. And again, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, David. Thanks to everyone for having me today and taking some time out of your day to join. I know everyone's busy, and sometimes technology can be challenging. At least it is for me. And so I've learned a lot along the way, and certainly I'm very thankful for Zoom. We've been able to get a lot of work done, as I'm sure you have as well. I do want to leave time at the end for questions. I'm gonna hit some topics, but I certainly want to be able to answer any questions that you might have. And so I'll probably go here for about 10 minutes, and then I'll just open it up. I know we've got a big group. Looks like maybe about 60 people on today, and so certainly want to give you guys time to ask questions. A little bit about myself. I'm originally from Arkansas, and I grew up in a small town there. I grew up a huge Razorback fan, and if you grow up in Arkansas, you really don't have a choice but to be a Razorback fan. And I grew up there and wanted to go to play basketball. About the 10th or 11th grade, I realized that I may get an opportunity to play basketball in college, and wanted to go to Arkansas, but they didn't recruit me. And so, I was upset about that, and certainly, was disappointed. But around that time, and really it was my senior year, Ole Miss came in and started showing me some attention. And I didn't know much about Ole Miss, but I knew that there were two things. One, they were my only SEC offer, and two, that they played against Arkansas. And so I felt like if I couldn't go to Arkansas, I needed to do kind of the next best thing, and that's to go play against Arkansas and show them what they missed. So I ended up coming to Ole Miss. I didn't know a lot about this place at all. And so I get here, and I've been here a few weeks, and one night we're hanging out over at one of the fraternity houses, and I get involved in a conversation with this guy, and we talk for about 15 or 20 minutes. Really nice guy, and basically just saying, hey, welcome to Ole Miss. We're glad you're here. We're glad you're going to be a part of our basketball team. If there's anything we can do to help, please let us know. Just typical what we think of Southern hospitality, somebody who was really welcoming and all of that. So I go back over to my friends, and they said, wow, how was that conversation? And I said, man, that was awesome. Really nice guy, very welcoming. And they said, well, you know who that was? And I said, well, I think he said his name was Cooper. And they said, that's Cooper Manning. And I said, who's Cooper Manning? And they said, well, that's Archie Manning's son. And I looked at him, I said, who's Archie Manning? And so I say all that to say is that I've come a long way in kind of what I know about Ole Miss and what I know about Oxford. My wife and I love living here in Oxford and raising our family. Certainly the university has been so good to me and to us. Got an education, and now obviously coming back full circle and getting an opportunity to lead our athletics department and hopefully mold and help shape some of the lives of our young men and women that are in our program. It's been an interesting and challenging time over the last few months. We were in Nashville for the SEC basketball tournament, kind of when all this hit, and we had some regularly scheduled athletics directors meetings that were going on there. And really on that Wednesday, Ole Miss was scheduled to play a basketball game that night, and that Wednesday is when it really, everything kind of hit home. And that afternoon, the NCAA decided they were not going to allow fans for the NCAA tournament. We had to jump into gear because there were 2 SEC games scheduled that night, and we were one of those. And we decided that night we would go ahead and play with fans, and then the rest of the tournament we would not. Well, in the meantime, that Wednesday night on into Thursday, we ended up canceling the tournament. I think I heard somebody talking on here before we started that we had a big series with LSU in baseball that weekend in Oxford. We agreed to not have any on-campus events until we figured this out. Our students were on spring break, so we kind of quickly and hurriedly, told them that we were going to extend spring break a week, so just stay home until we figure it out. And then obviously, as we all know, a lot more information started coming down, and we had to make some drastic changes to all of our lives and all of the way that we do things. And so we've had a lot of time between that time and now spending on calls just like this with the other athletics directors, with the SEC conference office, with Commissioner Sankey. And it's been really good. And I bet that all of you can relate that, a lot of the discussions we were having and the planning that we were making, we were just doing the best we could with the information available. And, sometimes we would make decisions and the very next day we might have to change that decision based on new information. And so it's been challenging, but I do really appreciate the collaboration that we've had with other athletic departments in the SEC and certainly with the league office. The last couple of weeks or the last month or so, our focus has been on bringing our student athletes back to campus. And we've spent a ton of time trying to figure out the right way to do that, the safe way to do that. Shannon Singletary, who oversees our sports and health performance here with Ole Miss Athletics, I kind of appointed him early on as our athletics liaison with campus. He's been involved in all of the discussions with Chancellor Boyce and his team as they've talked about, university matters, but certainly, as athletics tends to be, we're a lot of the times the front porch or the front door to the university. And obviously if we want to, start in the fall and we want to, try to start on time with our fall sports, we can't just bring our student athletes back on August 1st and be ready to roll. So we've been talking about this plan. The SEC presidents and chancellors, agreed that actually today, June 8th, is the first day that our student athletes can be back in our facilities for voluntary workouts. And so we started bringing them back last week. We started testing, both COVID-19 testing and antibody testing. I did my test last week. It was I was a little anxious going into the test, not going to lie. From what I'd seen and heard, but it wasn't that bad. It wasn't that bad. If you have to get one, it's not terrible. But I did that, and we ended up having 2 positive cases coming back out of about 250 tests last week. One was a student athlete, one was a staff member. And I'm really, really proud of Shannon and his team, our medical doctors, everyone that put our plan together, because our protocols basically held up. We knew we were going to have some confirmed cases. If you think back to early March or mid-March or early April, confirmed cases may have shut the whole operation down, but based on just not having the information and those type of things. But we were able to isolate these 2 individuals quickly. We were able to do contact tracing to find out kind of who they'd been with and those type of things. And those did not require any further testing, just based, again, on kind of our protocols. When we brought our students back, we brought our staff back. We were adhering to very strict social distancing guidelines and those type of things. So very, very proud of our efforts, and it's nice to know that sometimes when you put a plan in place that it works. And this one we felt like it did. So been a very smooth return to campus. One of the things as I talked to our chancellor about athletics and us again kind of being the first mover in this is that it really gives the campus almost a test case. For us, with about 400 student athletes that we're going to be bringing in here, really from June 1st through the end of June, it gives them a test case as they start to hopefully bring back students in the fall. 20,000 students that we're trying to bring back in early to mid-August to hopefully start a fall semester. So we know we only get one shot at this, and we know we've got to do it the right way. We know there's a lot of eyes watching us here in athletics, whether you're at Mississippi State Athletics or anywhere else in the SEC. People are looking to us to see how we're going to handle this, and hopefully it can happen on a larger scale as we get into the fall. But so far, so good. Everything's going well from that standpoint. The other thing I heard while I was listening in was that we need someone to tell us that we're going to play football this fall. I want to tell you that. I believe that. I think we'll start on time. just my gut feeling on this. Again, data will drive all of our decisions. I saw we're in the state today, there was a large number, almost 500 new cases, which I think it may be the largest number we've had so far. So obviously that's not good, but, I think if we can continue to at least kind of stay plateaued, if we can show that, we're doing the proper protocols, I have a good feeling that we'll be playing in the fall, and I hope on time, starting Labor Day weekend. The question that's probably the biggest thing that we've been wrestling with and kind of keeping us up at night is what are our stadiums going to look like? How many people are going to be able to come? Is there going to be a kind of a statewide mandate? If you look at the state of Texas, last week their governor came out and said that stadiums could have 50% capacity. If we were going to play today, stadiums could have 50% capacity. And so, at some point, Governor Reeves and kind of at the state level, there's going to be some guidance and we'll move forward from there. So therefore, we're looking at all kinds of different scenarios. We're looking at a full stadium and what that safety protocol would look like. We're looking at a stadium that's 50% full, one that's 25% full, just to be prepared for really everything as we move forward. Our ticket renewal deadline is June 15th, so that's upon us next Monday. And what we're going to be telling our season ticket holders, a lot that have already bought, but some that will buy up into the deadline, is that, go ahead and buy. And there's no risk. If we end up not having the season, if we end up having a modified season, we'll make everyone whole based on what they gave or give them options to move their donation to next year. But we're encouraging people to go ahead and buy their season tickets as if we're going to play. And, that's our hope. And that's certainly what we're striving for. But, it's been an interesting few months, obviously with everything that we have going on in our country right now, with some of the social injustice and racism and, the death of George Floyd and those type of things. We had a unity walk here on Saturday morning with all of our student athletes and our staff and our coaches. And it was really powerful. It was really good. And we had some of our student athletes that were able to voice, their thoughts and have a platform there. And what I've pledged to them is that that's just the start. Now we have to really open our eyes. We have to pay attention. We have to show that we're listening. And as an athletics department here at Ole Miss, we want to do that. And so we've got some other things planned for this week as far as listening sessions and some things of that nature. And then we hope that we can move forward in unity and certainly, show everyone in our department that we care and that we're listening. And so, again, those are only words. We got to put actions behind those. But I thought Saturday morning was really, really powerful. Again, you saw similar things at Mississippi State and Auburn and other SEC institutions. But my hope is that, again, it's not just something that we do for a photo op, but it's something that we do that is meaningful and that will help us implement change in the future. So with that, I'm going to open it up for questions. Like I said, I've got plenty of time here. I'll stick around as long as you want, but would love to answer any questions that you might have. David, I don't know what the right protocol is here, but if folks just want to pop in and ask questions.
Yeah, I think that's Beth, Keith. Just unmute yourself and ask your question, and really appreciate the opportunity to have this time with you.
This is Randy McCoy. Coach Carter, is there any information coming out of the SEC office when they're going to make a formal announcement about the upcoming fall athletic seasons?
Nothing official yet. I think that in kind of from conversations I've had, over the past couple of months, I think you could probably look for some type of decision in the first part of July, sometime between the 1st of July and maybe the 15th of July. I think that gives us an opportunity to say, here's what we're comfortable with. Here's what we need to work toward. That gives us, about 2 months, almost 2 months to really dive into, what the policy will be and what the protocol will be. But I think probably another month or so, and then we'll hopefully have some of those answers and some guidelines that we can work off of. I know as fans, people are wanting to know, but certainly as administrators and coaches and student athletes, we're wanting to know as well. So we're pushing that. But I do think one of the things that Commissioner Sankey has done a really good job of is trying to kind of go slow so that we can go fast later. And if we rush to decisions, if we do things and start trying to do things too early, I think we could end up, back kind of in the mess we were in before. But certainly we're going to have time to plan. We're going to have time to do things. But I think that first week or two in July is probably when we'll know a lot more about the fall seasons.
How is
This
this
is Ron
affected?
Ashby.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Tail.
This is Hale Freeland. How's this? I'm a bigger baseball fan. How's this affected retaining your scholarships, eligibility for next year, and who's coming back for next year?
Well, that's a great question. I believe all of our seniors, we had 4 that are all going to come back. And so we're excited about that. Basically, and there's still some things to work out, but basically, if you come back as a senior, your scholarship number does not count against the overall allotment. So in baseball, it's kind of been widely talked about. They only get 11.7 scholarships for the entire team. And so obviously, if you bring back 4 seniors and you're bringing in a freshman class, you probably had some juniors that you thought might get drafted. If the draft was a full draft this year, it's only going to be 5 rounds. So we'll probably lose a couple of guys to the draft where we would have maybe lost 6 or 7 guys to the draft. So it's a big math problem. It's a big math problem for these coaches. But it is nice that the seniors won't count against the 11.7. With those guys, those 4 guys, obviously they're not on full rides. It's an equivalency sport. But it would have, even if they were up to 1.5, 2 scholarships, through the 4 of them, that would have been hard to then award those freshmen that are coming in that freshman class. So, and I do think that too, there might be some relief on the 11.7 number at some point, even if it's just temporary for a couple of years. There's been no legislation yet, but there's a lot of talk about that. So people understand. I mean, softball's in a similar boat. They have a few more scholarships to deal with, but they're in a similar boat. Some of our other spring sports as well. But we here at Ole Miss are committed to those seniors that want to come back. I think we ended up with about 40% of our seniors that ended up coming back. Some, decided they want to go into law school or do whatever and just move on with their lives. But we got probably about half that are coming back, and we're certainly excited that they are.
Thank you.
Keith, this is Ron Ashby. Early on, there was talk about the Pac-10 or the West Coast teams perhaps not playing. Does Ole Miss have any games scheduled with schools that possibly could cancel their game?
We do not currently. Alabama's got a big game with USC. I think that they kick off the season with. I'll be honest. I think some of those comments that came out early from the West Coast, more from their league office, and just kind of trickled out. The head coaches out there were not very happy about that, and so they've kind of had some comments along the way. And I believe there's been some retraction of some of that stuff, and basically like, hey, we're going to play if we can play. Our first game is against Baylor in Houston. And, that's a game that has a lot of variables around it because it's going to a neutral site. It's an NFL stadium. Like I mentioned before, we know that we can fit at least 50% capacity in there because the governor has said that. But even at that point, how do you know who's going to be the 50%? How do we tell some people you can and some people you can't? So those are the things we're working through as well. But I don't foresee any issues from a team saying that they can't play. We haven't had that. We have had a couple of things happen in some of our other sports. For example, our women's basketball team was scheduled to go to the Bahamas for a tournament around Thanksgiving, and that tournament ended up getting canceled. So we're having to, reschedule a couple of games there, and we've had the same thing happen in a few of our other, smaller sports as well, our Olympic sports. So there are some variables there, but as far as football, I think we're in good shape.
Thank you.
Hey, Keith, it's David. Quick question. I know it's probably a little early, but I know travel is going to be a big issue, not just for Ole Miss going to Tupelo for home games, but traveling on the road. Have y'all worked on your plans as far as how you're going to travel, food, distancing during the season?
Absolutely. Yeah, we've spent a lot of time on that. And actually we are normally when we go on a football game, we take two planes. We take one that's a larger plane that has basically the team and a lot of mainly just the team and kind of that staff that's close to the team. And then if we're going to bring donors or have some secondary staff that's coming, we'll put them on the second plane. Well, what we've decided this year is we're only going to take one plane. We're going to need a little bit bigger plane, and we're only going to bring essential staff. We're not going to be able to bring people that typically had come to the games. For example, like my family used to travel on some road games. This year, we're not bringing families. And then two, it's really two things. One, and foremost, is for the safety perspective and making sure that we don't get a lot of different people around our team and those type of things. But two, financial. There's things we're having to look at. There's things we're having to cut. And obviously, you don't want to cut things that are going to affect your team or your coaches or them trying to win a game. So we immediately look at other places where we can save. And therefore, I had to go home and tell my family they can't go to the game. They weren't happy about that, but that's how it works. So and we're really doing that across the board. I think you're going to see a shift after all of this, that people really tightening their belts, people really seeing what's essential for the operations of their department. I think sometimes with the TV revenue and the different things that we've had over the past few years, you kind of tend to get a little fat and happy with what you're doing. And I will say this, we actually did some budget cuts last year. And so we're a little ahead of the curve maybe because we did a pretty significant budget cut, in our budget last year. So as we build the 2021 fiscal year budget, we're looking at a lot of those things. But certainly, safety and health drives the decisions first. And then after that, I think all of us as departments are going to have to look at where we're spending and what we can do without.
Keith, it's Ron Ashby again. Would the social distancing issues be different or the same for luxury boxes as opposed to general seating?
That's a really good question. We have spent probably the last couple of weeks looking at all of those scenarios. I guess the way the state is set up right now with protocols is that you can have up to 20 people in an area indoors. And so, our biggest suite holds 22 people, has 22 tickets. So is there a way that we could, potentially say that a suite is its own area and we have about 100 suites and skyboxes, 22 being the biggest and down to 12. So could you say that those are their own individual areas and adhere to those policies? I think you could. Our club areas, not quite as easy, but in our South Club, we have about 1,800 people that are there. So is there a way that we could say we can put, 75% capacity in there and make sure we're social distancing? We're looking at all of those. The bowl itself is where it gets a little more tricky because I think that's where, kind of like the Texas governor said, if you can have 50% capacity, to me, that's kind of what he's talking about, is in the bowl. But it's interesting because, if you have to have 6 feet between each person based on the policy, there's some ways you can look at that. If my family came, we have 5 people in our family. We've been together, this whole time. Could our 5 sit together and then you have 6 feet to the next account, or and vice versa? Or is it literally six people between each person? 6 feet between each person. So there's just a lot of different things. And again, there's some guidance that ultimately we're going to need probably from Governor Reeves and kind of what that looks like. But we'll be ready as soon, and we'll probably try to talk to him and others as these decisions are made and talk about, here are 3 options we have. We think these are safe. We'll probably collaborate with Mississippi State and some others too, Southern Miss, as we talk about this, and hopefully have kind of a unified effort as we go and talk about these plans. But no matter what the plan is, we will have a scenario for it because we have been spending a lot of time on that, in the last several weeks.
Keith, this is Jenny Jones. I was wondering, you had mentioned about trying to limit exposure for the players, not taking families to games and things like that. Are y'all going to be making or taking extra precautions with those players during the week for like dorm life and campus life and limiting their exposure when they're season is ongoing?
Well, we would love to. Again, we talked a lot about that. We feel very confident that having all of our student athletes back in Oxford and kind of under our care is probably better than them being, all over the country and in different areas. So we feel good about that, and we feel good about when they're in our facilities. We're going to be wearing masks when we're supposed to. We're going to be social distancing when we're supposed to, and following those protocols. But just like you and me, as soon as they leave our facilities, they're free to kind of do what they want to do. So I think a lot of it is about education, and just talking about the fact that, we need to be responsible, hold ourselves accountable from a standpoint of, not going up to the square and hanging out with, 100 people in close proximity. And, again, we've all been 18 to 22 years old. We like to hang out. We like to have fun and do all those things. And we don't want to take that away from our young people. But the bottom line is if we have a big spike, if we have something that, where we get 20 or 30 student athletes testing positive, then I think that totally changes the dynamic of what we're trying to do and probably, slows it way down. So again, not telling them what to do or how to do it, but certainly just educating and talking about, all the different scenarios that could happen. And ultimately they're ready to play. They want to play. They've been away from their sport for so long. Some of our athletes have been back home where they had, really no resources to even practice. Our baseball guys haven't been in a batting cage in 2 months because they're all closed, that type of thing. So they're ready to get back. I think they're serious about, following protocols. And hopefully when they're away from the facility, they will do the same.
Keith, can you talk about the alcohol sales and pros and cons?
Absolutely. So kind of just, assessing last year, and obviously we didn't get to finish up baseball. With football last year, we sold for the last 3 games and really didn't have anything major that popped up from it. We got some complaints with long lines and just more logistical things, which we're going to improve on. But as far as just, reports of negativity or reports of arrests and those type of things, those did not spike. Obviously I think we all know that just before we were selling, there was still a little bit of drinking going on in our stadium. People were probably sneaking in a few things, but we didn't get really any negative feedback from that standpoint. Basketball was very smooth, really no incidents at all there. And then baseball, probably the sport where, if you want to have a hot dog and drink a beer, it probably makes the most sense. That one was going smoothly as well. The games we had played were obviously more in the colder time of the year in February and March. So it'll be interesting to see how that one plays out as we get into the, April and May, this next year. The revenue was good, but it wasn't, we had actually forecasted a little bit more than kind of the way it all shook out this year. But we understand that it's a hot topic. It's something that's new. But we also think there's a lot of data to support that if we are selling and doing it responsibly, that maybe it does deter, some of the binge drinking and the things that are happening in the Grove literally right before people walk in the stadium because they know they can't buy a beer or have a drink for 3 or 4 hours. We're hoping that data, comes to fruition, and certainly we want to have a safe environment for everyone. But it'll be interesting as we go through a full year to get another year of data and kind of watch how that progresses.
Keith?
Yes, sir.
My name's Henry Sanders. I'm an alumnus from the 60s, long time ago. Hopefully you can see my helmet in the background here. There was some conversation last fall about the students being unhappy with the north end zone seating. The COVID-19 notwithstanding, is any consideration being given to relocate the student section?
Yes, sir. We have talked a lot about that, and we looked at a couple of different scenarios in the off season where we could potentially move them around the stadium, maybe back to the south end zone where they were before, and then maybe move our visitors to the north end zone. Ultimately, we didn't make that decision, and it was really based on the fact that if we did that, we were going to have to minimize the amount of tickets that they would have available to them. Right now, they have about 10,000 tickets available to them in the north end zone. If we were going to move them around, without totally disturbing some of our season ticket holders and those. We were going to have to move some season ticket holders for sure, but we were going to have to probably take that down to about 8,000 student tickets. And we just, with Coach Kiffin coming in and a lot of the excitement around our program, we just felt like, if we were taking tickets away from the students, ultimately, we're probably going to get a lot of fallout from that as well, that our students can't get tickets. And so our thought was to keep it in the north end zone again. We talked about doing things to help. The heat is what continues to be the topic. That in those early games it's really warm. So are there ways that we can bring misters in or bring fans in or ways that we can potentially help it with cool down a little bit. But I'll say this, last year we had a lot of really optimal game times too at night where the sun was not a factor, and we didn't have full student sections during those games either. So I've talked to some student groups about the fact that we need their buy-in too, and we need them there. We're going to meet them halfway. We're going to get there and listen to what they're saying. But certainly, we need them to come to the games and support. And, hopefully with Coach Kiffin, as we get better and better, you get less 11 o'clock games where it's not as hot, and we can move forward from there. But yes, we'll continue to listen to the students, and we know that they're so important to our game, environment, our game atmosphere. So we'll continue to listen to them and see what we can do to help moving forward.
Hey, Keith, it's David again. Talk about the potential of hot spots. I know Oxford High School is back practicing, but Starkville is not, because that part of the state is a hot zone right now. Some high schools are not, and it's different with college. But do you potentially see teams that we're playing being in a hot zone? And if so, what are your thoughts about how to address that with a team traveling into that environment?
Yeah, that's really important. And, we addressed a lot of that as we had our student athletes coming back from, their respective homes in different areas. And obviously we're spread out all over the country and the world with our student athletes. So we did a lot of, basically before they arrived back on campus, we were calling them, we were talking to them about, do they have symptoms, and doing these checks via telephone. And certainly the ones that were in those hotspot areas, making sure that before they came back to Oxford, that they were in a good place and certainly were not infected with the virus. But yes, as we move forward, I think that's where, kind of back to the travel question before, we got to make sure that we're tight with our travel group, that when we arrive in those areas that we're going, straight to the hotel, we're staying in the hotel, and we're going straight to the game, straight to the locker room, out to the field. Really not a lot of opportunity for our young men or young women, if it's volleyball or soccer, traveling to, go out to the mall or whatever during the day, where it's just, things they would normally do if they've got a night game or whatever. So we're going to have to look into all that. And then certainly as we play teams that come to Oxford, we'll want to make sure that we're in communication with their staff and with their medical professionals and all of that. So, I'll be honest, a lot of this is just uncharted waters. And we've got to do the best we can with the information that we have. And so we will do that, but we're going to make some mistakes, certainly. But I couldn't be more happy and proud of the efforts that we've had from a medical standpoint so far and a preparation standpoint. And I anticipate that will continue as we move forward.
Any more questions for Keith? If not, thank you, Keith, for joining us today. We appreciate all the information you were able to share with us. Thank you again.
Well, thank you for the time. I'm a little disappointed that we couldn't do it in person. I always enjoy the Pledge of Allegiance and the prayer that we get at a Rotary Club meeting. And then I also enjoy getting my Rotary coffee mug. So maybe I can get one of those later from David so I can drink some coffee. But thank you for everything. And if y'all need anything in Oxford, please let us know. We're happy to have you at Oxford anytime to come to a game or check us out. But appreciate all y'all do for us and the work that y'all do for the local community. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And we will continue to invite members from other clubs in District 6800 to our Zoom meetings. Next week, we have Senator Roger Wicker We'll have a start time at 11 a.m., which is obviously noon in Washington. He'll be talking to us on his lunch hour. So we'll have him next week at 11 o'clock our time on June 22nd. We'll go back to a noon start, and our speaker that day will be the Mississippi Secretary of Education, Dr. Carrie Wright. So anyway, we look forward to having each of you join us for those meetings as well. And as we have other meetings scheduled, that information will be disseminated to y'all as well. And again, we have a board meeting tomorrow night. So if any Tupelo Rotarians have items to bring for the board, please contact me or one of the board members. With that, unless there's any other announcements, if not, we will stand adjourned.
Thank you for inviting us.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks.